Hey everyone, welcome back to the Barbexter YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be reading you guys some scary stories I found on Reddit. Let's get right into it. I think my son is a serial killer. This post was posted on r/scary stories by user Donovan221. I tried my best. I really frickin' tried. I didn't want parenthood, but when it's given to you, hell, it's hard not to fall in love with it. It has its ups and downs, sure, but throughout it all, you learn to love your child. They're an extension of you, a part of yourself that you can try and mold into an even better person. Unfortunately, people aren't as clean cut as that. You tell them to zig, and they zag. It's just how life is. Beyond the disagreements and head bumpings, though, it's still possible to raise a kid, bring them up right in the world. That's what I thought I was doing. My son was well-mannered, a gentleman, and, God, did he have his way with the ladies. Once high school started, it seemed like every other week he was telling me all about his new love or that he was sure this was the one. He was only 15, but who was I to cast doubt on whatever love life he found himself? Plus, it all stayed at school, having those cafeteria dates and what have you. However, by 17, he was actually bringing girls over to meet us, having dinner with his mom and I. Now, I'm not the best with names, but I do remember faces quite well. That's why, when I started noticing the missing persons flyers, I was quick to cock an eyebrow. But this is my son we're talking about, the boy who I'd raised since I was a child myself. I was 16 when he was born. I worked my ass off for him. We grew up together. I couldn't convince myself that everything was peachy forever, though, and by the time I saw Miranda's name on those flyers, the most recent girl he had brought home, I knew that I had to talk to him. I needed to set things straight, give some relief to my suspicion. I begged God, prayed like a madman that I was wrong, but the more I thought, the more I started connecting dots. I've never had one of those girls visit more than once or twice. I'd already caught my son sneaking out at night on multiple occasions. He seemed to always have those hollow eyes whenever he interacted with any of them. When he talked about them, though, it was different. It was like he was truly excited, but not in that normal teenage boy kind of way. It was like, when he talked to me about them, he was fantasizing, thinking about what he wanted to do to them. When I finally got home after a long day at the office, I practically sprinted up the stairs to my son's room to inquire. To my disappointment, the room was empty, and my son was nowhere to be seen. What I did find, though, were missing persons flyers, folded neatly on his nightstand, each one depicting a different ex-girlfriend. Now, if it had just been the flyers by themselves, I'd been able to explain it away. Maybe he was helping to hang them up. Maybe he had just run out to finish. Or maybe he had forgotten to grab them. No. Life can never be that easy. What made me realize that I needed to do more than talk to my son was what had been written on those flyers. Scrawled across each of the flyers in the handwriting that I helped my boy practice with were complaints. Too loud. Too demanding. Too arrogant. Too annoying. I sifted through the papers, and by the end had read a total of 7 complaints. A tear fell down my face. Streaming down the cheek dipped into my newly discovered smile. I must have been in a trance because I didn't even hear the bedroom door open. All I remember is that faint, quiet, "Dad?" before I turned to greet my son. Emotion overwhelmed me, and all I could think to say as I outstretched my arms for a hug was, "That's my boy." This story was really interesting, and I'm a big fan of the plot twist at the end. It's definitely not true. I'd like to make that apparent, obviously, but the plot twist in the end was that the dad and the son were both serial killers, and he was proud of that fact. So, pretty good story. Shout out to this Redditor. I found my missing son after 20 years of searching. This is by Donovan221. Looking back now, I think it was destiny that me and my wife had that argument. I won't go too in-depth, but I will say it wasn't the first time I'd stormed out of the house in a rage. Ever since Matthew went missing, it was either solemn silence or violent outbursts between me and her. He was our son, the one thing in this world we were supposed to protect with every ounce of our strength in our bodies, only for him to disappear right below our noses. We used to hike as a family, head up to the trails, and get away from the city. It was grounding, tantalizing almost. Picnicking, taking dips in whatever stream or river we could find, feeling Mother Nature embrace us in her arms. Hell, I still remember the hike we went on that day when everything happened, the day our lives crumbled around us. March 16th, 2006. The air was starting to warm up again here in the south. Trees had started blossoming again. The sun felt actually inviting rather than ironic. Matthew was 6 at the time. His mother and I had planned out an entire day for our journey, packed water, soda, sandwiches, and each of our favorite snacks. Things were going smoothly until about a half mile into the hike. My wife had to use the bathroom, and she made sure that me and Matthew knew it, complaining every 100 steps or so. It got to a breaking point where her complaints began to carry anger within them. "Can you just stop for 1 second?" she snapped, glaring at the two of us. "Whoa there, honey," I replied as gently as possible. "No need to get upset. We'll stop. Here, I'll just stay here with Matt. You go do your business." We stepped a few feet off the trail, and me and Matthew leaned up against the boulder in the forest while his mom went behind a distant tree to do her thing. I noticed that the forest was quieter than usual. Not even a single chirp of a bird. In hindsight, that should have been a dead giveaway. But in the moment, all I could think about was just how beautiful the weather was. Not a single cloud in the sky, just a bright blue canvas that looked almost too perfect. While we waited, the two of us teased a bit, poking fun at how, even though she had tried to put distance between us, we could still hear the trickle of pee hitting the leaves. We went back and forth until a new sound, the snapping of a twig, choked the laughter in our throats. That's all it took. The brief moment it took for me to turn my head, and he was gone. I thought he was playing a prank at first, hiding behind the rock, waiting to jump out and scared me. I called his name once, twice, 3 times, and was met with the same unnatural silence. As if to taunt me, right on the brink of my panic attack, the forest exploded, leaves rustling, twigs snapping, and footsteps. Fast ones that erupted through the brush at breakneck speeds. My wife came running back when she heard my shouts, appearing to be panicked herself, even though she didn't know what had happened yet. It wasn't long before she had noticed Matthew's absence, though. They were the first words out of her mouth. "Where's Matthew?" No response. "Honey, where did Matthew go? Did he have to pee too?" I'm crying now. "Donovan, where's our son?" There are few questions that could break a man in half, but this one destroyed me. I didn't know how to answer her. All I could do was stammer through an explanation. He was right here. I looked away for 1 second. I don't know where he went. There are a multitude of things that made my wife blame me for what happened this day, but I think that the last sentence is what really drove home her newfound hatred of me. We didn't have time to dwell on that now. My wife didn't even wait for the last word to leave my mouth before she was darting off into the woods. The two of us must have searched an entire 5-mile radius before the sun went down, and another 5 before it rose again the next morning. With the search team, there wasn't a single part of that forest that hadn't been searched, and through all of that looking, all we found of my boy was his left sneaker. The laces were untied, and that made my heart shatter in a way I can't explain. I just pictured him out there, all alone and barefoot. It was nothing but emptiness between my wife and I from that day forward. I wanted to continue, but she had checked out entirely. We were both alone in the same rooms. I think what kept us together were the search efforts. In some twisted way, it was like a hobby for us to search the woods, to pin up the posters, to maintain hope. I swear it was like we were being toyed with every time we went back in that forest. Maybe it was just our minds breaking. Maybe we were really hearing our son call out for us just beyond our reach. Maybe that's what kept us up there. Illusion can only take you so far, though. And after years of enduring that illusion, I think both of our tanks were running on empty. It's probably why the argument started. We argued before, but now those spats had teeth. Personal, ugly, marriage-ending spats. We never tried for another child. It felt like betrayal, like we were abandoning the old for something new. Matthew was gone. There was nothing left for us. Each fight brought us closer and closer to the thread we had been hanging from for the last year. So when last night's argument began, I knew that the thread had been severed. Instead of the usual screaming match, we just agreed with each other. Agreed that we had reached an end. There was a calmness around us. Not a good calm. The kind of calm that comes right before the explosion of a sound. And I wasn't going to be there for that bang. So I left. unsure of what to do. Though I'd been sober for 8 years at this point, I found it extraordinarily difficult to resist the buried urge. I can't even say it was by luck that I came across my son's missing poster on the way to the local bar. Maybe in some alternate reality I would have taken a different path, walked past a store I've never seen before, but the truth is, I'd walked this route 1,000 times, watched my son's face get replaced by advertisements and missing pets. That's the thing though, it had been covered up, buried beneath years' worth of replacements. I cannot think of a feasible reason as to why it was in that storefront window, looking freshly printed. I stopped walking, freezing in place at the sight. "Have you seen me?" The words felt like a challenge. I was sick of things haunting me, sick of feeling alone, sick of feeling blamed, and sick of not having my goddamn son. I didn't need to be piss drunk to find the will to go back in that forest. The fire that burned inside me was enough to get me there and push me forward into the trees. I felt swallowed by the tall pines, a feeling that had become far too similar with over the past 20 years. My knees ached, my heart raced, I felt tired. I wasn't the man I was the year my son went missing. I was 48 years old at this point. I'd slowed down. Life had beaten a lot out of me, but not everything, and I used that little pinch of energy I had left to put my everything into one final search. With nothing but the flashlight on my phone to guide me, I searched like a madman. It was as though I rediscovered the same adrenaline and restlessness I had on the day it happened. I didn't even keep track of the time. It felt like every second that passed was a second that brought me closer to my sweet Matthew. All I knew was look harder than you ever have in your entire life. That's the funniest part, or the cruelest, depending on how you looked at it. I was so entranced that it was by sheer accident that I stumbled upon that rock, that lone boulder in the woods. I could replay the scene in my head perfectly. My wife walking deeper into the woods, me and Matthew giggling with each other. Up until this point, I figured the forest was silent due to the fact that it was nighttime. But now, I was thinking something else, something darker. I'd been in these woods thousands of times before he went missing. Never once had it been silent. And now that I was thinking about it, I realized that it wasn't even silent at night. The silence was an omen, a calm before the storm. As if to punctuate my thoughts once again, the forest erupted with noise. It's a weird feeling when your already racing heart drops into your stomach. I didn't know whether to pass out or to start running. What froze me in my tracks, however, is when the sounds of the forest morphed into something foreign to the forest, but deeply familiar to me. It was like his voice surrounded me, encircled me from every corner of the woods. "Daddy. Help me, Dad. Dad, I want to go home. Please, Dad." The voices were off. It was like there was no emotion behind them, just flat pleas. Nevertheless, it had me spinning in circles. And just then, just as suddenly as it had started, the voices stopped. The woods fell silent again. The only sound that I could hear was the snapping of a twig behind me. I turned slowly at first, afraid of what my eyes would show me in the moment I turned around. However, when I heard my son's voice directly behind me, it had me breaking my neck to look. "Look at me, Dad," announced in that same monotone voice. And there he was, my sweet, sweet boy, my beautiful baby boy Matthew, missing a shoe, smiling at me with that same snaggletooth smile. I scooped him up into my arms. I could finally feel him again, but what I felt didn't feel like I remembered. There was no warmth in his stiff body. It didn't even feel like he wanted to hug me. His arm lay limply on my back as I squeezed him. I put 20 years of pain and suffering into that hug, and all I could feel was emptiness. "Come back with me, Dad," Matthew croaked. "I want you to meet my new family." Setting my son back down on the ground, I looked him in the eyes as he spoke to me about this new family. As I did so, I don't know if it was due to the fact that it was dark or if my mind was playing tricks on me, but Matthew's eyes looked pitch black. "We've all been waiting for so long for you to find us, Dad. You finally did it. We can all be together." With a cold, limp hand, my son grabbed me by mine and began tugging me deeper into the forest. With each step, it seemed like a new pair of footsteps joined us, keeping their distance from us as they stomped through the fallen leaves and the pine cones. All I could do was follow him. I'd waited 20 years for this moment. This story was pretty interesting. I'm definitely a fan. So I think what the ending was implying, based on what I read, is that whatever force, it seems unexplained, whatever force kidnapped his son or took his son is now taking him. I find that pretty interesting. I assume that the son also was approached by some kind of entity or thing that took him as well, you know? But his was super sudden, whereas his dad's was a lot more, like, longer term. So it's as if this force kidnapped his son and is using his son as a way to, like, goat him into entering the forest again and make them join him. This one was really good. Alrighty, if you've made it this far in the video, I want to say thanks. That was the final story I'm going to be reading. Make sure to subscribe and like if you have gotten this far, and let me know any improvements in the comments. There was a comment that told me to add some background music, which I'm definitely going to do for this video, and hopefully you've been hearing by this point. So, yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your day.